There is nothing within the simulation that wasn't first imagined by someone's state of consciousness. It's a simulation. It's a holographic world that you see in front of you right now. Everything that you're experiencing that seems like a solid reality is actually just a simulation. It's a projection from something within you that you first imagined as a state of consciousness. So you have to ask yourself right now, what are you imagining? Because your world is as it is based on what you're imagining from your current state of consciousness. And this is what Neville Goddard went over, visualizing the end, living in the end. What does that do? It changes what you're imagining, consciously or unconsciously. Your inner dialogue, your assumptions change. Everything is changing because everything in your world is from what you have imagined from your state of consciousness. And if your state of consciousness changes through visualization, then your world has to change with it. The simulation. You're now projecting a different movie that you're now interacting with and living in. And everyone is essentially on default mode of what they're imagining in their mind based on their concept of themselves and their current state of consciousness. But as you get out and change your states of consciousness through visualization and through other variables that I'm going to get into in this video, as you do that, you start to change and manipulate and control the simulation and the movie that you're living in. You can literally change to any movie that you want based on your current state of consciousness. And if you change your state of consciousness, that's how the movie changes. And if you're very present all the time and you're living in the present moment and you can consciously see the pictures that are coming into your mind and seeing the inner conversations that you're having with yourself, you will determine why your world is the way it is right now. You're actually picturing everything before you do it because you don't have free will to act. You only have free will to act within your state of consciousness. And when I say that, I mean that you cannot do anything unless it lines up with your current state of consciousness. Like, you cannot act outside of it. Like, I am a YouTube influencer. I run multiple businesses. I cannot do anything outside of that unless I change it first. Like when I made this video, as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm actually picturing it in my imagination before I do it, before I speak. Everything is coming within my imagination through my inner dialogue before it even touches the simulation whatsoever. But as human beings, we have the ability to change our states of consciousness whenever we want. We can level ourselves up by pretending and acting as if we already have everything we desire. And when we start acting and feeling and our moods change, then we raise our states of consciousness and our inner dialogues change. The pictures in our mind starts changing. We start creating a different world, a different simulation, transferring in the multiverse and colliding with that multiverse that lines up with this new version of ourselves, because there's an infinite amount of versions of you that are living in worlds that live simultaneously to us right now. And you can be that person. All you have to do is find that person and what state of consciousness is that person in, and you become that state of consciousness. And then your pictures in your mind start changing, your imagination, your inner dialogue starts lining up, and now you're projecting a different animation into the simulation. The projector is now projecting an entirely different projection on the screen of space. Now you're in a whole new movie. And these are really ancient teachings that even Abdullah taught Neville Goddard, because when Neville Goddard was a broke vaudeville dancer, he went to Neville because he wanted to go back to Barbados. He says, I want to go back to Barbados, my homeland, but I don't have any money. How do I do that? And Abdullah told him, he says, live as if you're already there. Walk around New York City, the streets of New York City, as if you're walking around in the streets of Barbados, and fall asleep in your hometown, in the house you grew up in, or the house that you're going to go to. Don't fall asleep in New York. Fall asleep in Barbados. And walk the streets of New York as if you are already in Barbados. And he told him, you already went there. And he slams the door in his face. And through this method, it changes your state of consciousness. Now he's in a state of consciousness that's already in Barbados. So the pictures in his mind change. His inner dialogues start to change. And then it has to force something to happen that collides with in the multiverse with that world where he's now in Barbados. And then he gets worried through the process of it, because it doesn't matter if you're doubting, if you're doing the work, as long as you're falling asleep in Barbados and you're doing the work. So he still had some doubts about this. And he went to Abdullah and said, it's getting close. We only have a few days and I have to hit and I don't have any money. I don't know how I'm getting there. And he says, Abdullah says, I don't know what you're talking about. You went to Barbados and you went first class. And he slams the door in his face. And this example is a really good example of how the law of assumption can be very magical, where you don't absolutely have to do, you don't have to do anything. But what I'm talking about, when you change your concept of yourself and you're trying to create a version of you that is very successful, that is very abundant, that is very productive, providing value and service to the world, there's going to be some things that are going to happen that are going to help you level up within the simulation. They're going to help you level up for the natural feeling that you are now a new person. What Neville Goddard did in that scenario was just put himself in Barbados, which changed the pictures in his mind. So the subconscious mind believes that he's now in Barbados. So he doesn't have to really change his state or change his concept of, or who he is as a person in order to get there. Just changing the imaginal acts and the inner conversations in his mind to believe and convince the subconscious mind that he's already in Barbados. You don't have to convince yourself. You only have to convince the subconscious mind that you're there. The imaginal pictures in your mind is what's convincing the subconscious mind, which controls everything. That's God. That's God. You're convincing God that you're already there. So that's part of the simulation. That's all consciousness. But even when you're creating and manifesting and changing your inner dialogue and your states of consciousnness, it can take a degree of attention. You're going to have some degree of attention. Neville Goddard was a vaudeville dancer. That's like somewhat of a form of yoga because your body and everything that you see in the simulation is part of the subconscious or part of God. So that's, everything objectively you see is part of the subconscious. Okay, that's part of God. And Neville Goddard had the connection between what he's conscious of and the simulation itself. He had that connection through mind and body. Okay, mind is the conscious. That's what controls the subconscious. So you have that control through methods of controlling your attention on mind-body. The mind controls the body. Mind controls matter. So Neville Goddard had the degree of this. That way he could really just get into that feeling and disregard the three-dimensional world or the simulation and feel as though he was already in Barbados. Because once you master this skill, this school of thought, and really get yourself into that state of consciousness where you really truly feel that you're now somewhere where you're not, or you are a person that you aren't currently, but you're disregarding everything that says that you aren't this person, but you're still convincing yourself in the subconscious mind that you are that person. But it comes with that degree of attention that Neville Goddard had, so he was able to use this, almost immediately. And with the world today, with all the instant gratification, and all these, the pornography and all these different things that are controlling, and alcohol and drugs and all these things, these are all the things that are robbing your power of attention. Because if you don't have attention and you don't have present moment awareness, then you can't disregard what the simulation is showing you. You don't have that power. And that's what all this instant gratification, all this social media, all these YouTube shorts, these things that are robbing your attention, drugs and alcohol, pornography, all these things are robbing your power for you to be able to manifest your desires. And that's why I say, when you're visualizing something, you're creating something, you're changing something in your world, you should not be focused on what you need to do. You need to be focused on what you should not be doing. What you should not be doing is all of these things: drugs, alcohol, instant gratification, pornography, all these things you need to eliminate. And just focus on that. If you just focus on that, then you will start gaining your ability to hold your attention, disregard a three-dimensional world, and really start getting to that next level. So stop focusing on the things that you should be doing. Start focusing on things that you should not be doing, and start with that. And as you start eliminating those things from your world, you're going to have the connection. You're going to start having the connection and seeing the pictures in your mind and your inner dialogue. You're going to be very conscious of these things, and you're going to be able to start controlling the simulation, controlling the inner world, what you're imagining. Your state of consciousness will change simply by eliminating these things in your world. And this is exactly why I went to prison, and everything that I did while I was in prison for 8.5 years. I stopped doing those things. I eliminated those things. I didn't have access to them. They were taken from me, but that's how I gained control of the direction of my attention. I wasn't doing anything. No drugs, no alcohol, no instant gratification. You don't have any of that in prison. I mean, it's there, but you really have to search for it, and I wasn't interested in that. I made a decision to change. I wanted to figure out how to control the simulation, and I dedicated myself to doing it, and I didn't have any of that stuff. No pornography, no alcohol, no drugs, no instant gratification, and I watched all of my macros, all of my diet. I was eating good and controlling my attention, meditating, and going within myself, monitoring my inner dialogues, the pictures in my mind, and developing this part of my mind so that my mind can manipulate matter. And sometimes that is necessary to accomplish the things that Abdullah was talking about, disregarding your three-dimensional world. How are you going to disregard everything in your world if you don't have control of the direction of your attention? You're a consumer. You're consuming things all day long and that are controlling your attention. You're already being controlled by you're being controlled by all of that stuff. How are you going to say, just change 1 second while you're doing all that? Be like, okay, I'm going to disregard that I have all of these bills, all of this debt. I'm going to be a millionaire in my mind without your attention, without control of your attention. You can't do that. You have to have control of the direction of your attention and have present moment awareness and fix this idea in your mind and hold your attention on it that this is already done. You are this person now, and you're falling asleep with that, with the intention to succeed. You are this person. You're living as though you already have this stuff. And you can't do that if you're constantly distracted and you're doing all these things where instant gratification, social media, all these things all day long have your attention. You have to take your attention back. Just like what Joe Dispenza said, meditate for at least 10 minutes a day. And if you're busy, meditate for an hour a day. If you're too busy, meditate for more time. You need to meditate. You need to find yourself. Get to know thyself. That's what meditation means. Get to know thyself. Read your imagination. See what's going on inside yourself and start creating and stop being a consumer. So start creating and stop consuming. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video.